born in Urbana, Illinois, but calls Williamsburg, Virginia, her hometown. She's a scientist at heart, with degrees in biology and marine science from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Before joining NASA, Zena did field work in some of the most extreme environments on Earth, including Antarctica, the Canadian high Arctic, and volcanic terrain in Idaho and Hawaii. She was selected as part of NASA's 2017 astronaut class, affectionately known as the Turtles. Zena was originally assigned to Crew-9, but was later reassigned to command Crew-11 to support changes in station operations. And when she's not training for spaceflight, she enjoys rock climbing, writing poetry, and powerlifting.
Next up is your Crew-11 pilot, NASA astronaut Michael Fink. He's a Pennsylvania native and a veteran of 3 previous space flights, spending more than a year of his life in orbit. He first flew to space in 2004 as a flight engineer on Expedition 9, then returned in 2009 to command Expedition 18, where he helped prepare the station for future 6-person crews. In 2011, he took part in the final flight of Space Shuttle Endeavour, STS-134, logging 3 more spacewalks along the way. Fink has also been a key player in NASA's commercial crew efforts, supporting development of the Boeing Starliner. He served as a backup pilot for the crew flight test, helping shape Starliner's avionics and software from the ground up, and he co-hosted a launch broadcast. Outside of spaceflight, he's a passionate learner into geology, astronomy, reading, and languages. He's conversational in both Japanese and Russian, which is a skill that comes in handy on the International Space Station.
And your Mission Specialist 1 for Crew-11 is Kimiya Yui, representing the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA. A former test pilot and Air Force officer, Yui graduated from Japan's National Defense Academy in 1992 and rose to the rank of lieutenant colonel in the Japanese Air Self-Defense Force. He was selected as a JAXA astronaut in 2009 and made his first trip to space in 2015, spending 142 days aboard the International Space Station as part of Expeditions 44 and 45. During that mission, he made history as the first Japanese astronaut to capture JAXA's H-2 transfer vehicle, a crucial piece of cargo hardware. He also helped build out a new experimental module inside Kibo, Japan's laboratory on station, and carried out
Dragon SpaceX, 5 minutes to deorbit sequence start.
Dragon copy.
All right, that was SpaceX Core, just letting the crew know that we're about 5 minutes away from the initiation of that 13-minute deorbit burn. Now back to Kimiya Yui. He carried out experiments, 21 experiments, in fact, on behalf of JAXA while on board station. In 2016, Yui was named chief of JAXA's astronaut group, and today he's on his way back to space, or excuse me, is on his way back from space.
And rounding out the crew, we have mission specialist Oleg Platonov, a cosmonaut for Roscosmos, Russia's space agency, and a graduate of the Krasnodar Higher Military Aviation School of Pilots, where he earned a degree in engineering and the rank of lieutenant. Platonov completed his cosmonaut training in 2018 and was certified as a test cosmonaut that same year. His flight to the International Space Station was launched last year, continuing our chapter in international collaboration. He's married and has 1 child, and Crew-11 was his first journey to space. Again, we are standing by for the deorbit burn, which will bring Crew-11 home, again splashing off the coast of California approximately 1 hour from now. That's 3:41 a.m. Eastern Time. During their time in orbit, Crew-11 celebrated 25 years of continuous human presence aboard the International Space Station. During that time, our unique microgravity laboratory has hosted more than 4,000 experiments from over 5,000 researchers in more than 110 countries, all to help us build the road to the Moon and Mars and understand our universe while helping humanity on Earth. Crew-11 conducted more than 140 unique scientific experiments and technology demonstrations during their stay aboard the orbiting laboratory. Continuing the space station's legacy of groundbreaking science, Crew-11 worked on experiments to understand bone loss and studied bioprinted human tissues to understand or to ensure the health of astronauts on future missions and improve the quality of life for patients on Earth. They worked on the development of long-term storage of cryogenic fluids in space with Earth-bound medical and industrial applications. The team also tested an inflatable capture bag that aims to remove space debris from orbit, protecting future spacecraft and crews, and could also be used to capture samples during exploration missions and enable mining of small asteroids.
Let's dive into some of these experiments and investigations. The MABLE-B study investigates how microgravity affects bone marrow stem cells and their secretion of proteins involved in bone formation and loss. Researchers aim to determine whether blocking a bone loss pathway could help prevent that bone loss. Findings may lead to new strategies for combating bone loss both in space and on Earth. MVP Cell 07 studies how bioprinted liver tissue with blood vessels matures in microgravity, focusing on cell behavior and tissue development. Researchers are examining how space may affect the structure and function of these engineered tissues. Results could help advance space-based production of high-quality tissues and organs for medical use on Earth and support astronaut health on future missions. Capture Bag Demo tests an inflatable debris capture bag on the space station, assessing its opening, closing, and ability to stay airtight in microgravity. This technology could be used to remove space debris from orbit, protecting future spacecraft and crew members, and could also be used to capture samples during exploration missions to the Moon and Mars and enable mining of small asteroids.
Next up is ZBOT-NC. Many spacecraft use cryogenic fuels, which are extremely cold, for propulsion. These fuels must be kept extremely cold to stay liquid, but SpaceX's temperature fluctuations can cause them to slowly evaporate and escape the tank. This creates fuel efficiency and mission planning. So ZBOT-NC investigates how specific types of gases affect pressure control in propellant tanks in space. The data collected will help validate models and contribute to the design of more efficient cryogenic fuel storage systems for long-duration missions. Rounding out this list, Bionutrients 3 aims to develop an on-demand method for producing essential nutrients in space using bioengineered yeast, helping maintain crew health on long-duration missions while reducing launch mass. Building on previous studies, it introduces advanced food safety features and tests 3 sample types: yogurt, kefir, and a yeast-based beverage. The project aims to identify a food-safe, genetically engineered organism that remains viable over multiple years to produce a mission-relevant nutrient or biomolecule of interest.
If you've just recently tuned in, we are standing by for the call out of the initiation of our deorbit burn. We're expecting that to begin at 11:51 p.m. Pacific time. This is a 13.5-minute long burn that positions Dragon for its atmospheric reentry and splashdown off the coast of San Diego. So like I mentioned, we are standing by. That should be coming here in just a couple of minutes as we expect that to initiate at 11:51 p.m. Pacific time.
As we await that deorbit burn, which we expect to commence momentarily, just a look at some of the Crew-11 statistics. Their mission will last 167 days by the time they splash down, with 165 days spent on the space station. That means they traveled 2,672 orbits of Earth, which is over 70,856,752 statute miles. We're hearing about 30 seconds until that deorbit burn start. During their time in space, this crew saw a total of 5 arriving vehicles and the departure of 3 vehicles. And right on time, at 2:51 a.m. Eastern Time, we have confirmation that the deorbit burn has begun. This burn is expected to last over 13 minutes. For these return and splashdown operations, the United States Coast Guard, in coordination with SpaceX and NASA, establishes a safety zone to ensure public safety and for the safety of those involved in the recovery operations, as well as the crew aboard the returning spacecraft. Multiple notices are issued to mariners in advance and during recovery operations, and Coast Guard assets may be deployed to discourage boaters from entering the splashdown zones. We want to again stress to all of the public the need to respect this safety zone. Recovering a spacecraft from the water is a hazardous operation, and any other boats interfering increases risk to the astronauts in the capsule, the teams working to recover them from the water, and the safety of those that come too close. Now, for the safety of the crew and your own safety, we would love for you to continue joining us on NASA Plus and the SpaceX webcast, because you're going to get the best views of our astronauts on their journey home.
Like Leah said, the best views will be coming to you here on our webcast. However, if you are in the Los Angeles area, the San Diego area there in Southern California, I do encourage you to step outside about 12:30 a.m. as you might be able to see the spacecraft actually re-entering on its way there back to the splashdown site. And if you're lucky, you might even hear a sonic boom. Now, as always, NASA and SpaceX jointly select our splashdown location, and for today, the primary recovery site is there off of the coast of San Diego. The selection process works with a lot of different variables, including the space station's orbital trajectory, what landing sites are available and have favorable weather, how much free flight capability that Dragon has for the trip home, and of course, the sleep schedule for the returning crew members. We'll start with calculating daily return options based off of the space station's current orbit and Dragon's capabilities to maneuver and line up for re-entry. The time from undock to landing at the primary site can vary from less than 6 hours to more than 39. For Crew-11 this evening, their journey is going to be about 10.5 hours in total. Of course, getting home the quickest comes with some obvious benefits, but we always have to make sure that the crew is properly rested for all these dynamic operations. And of course, that would prevent us from scheduling 20-plus hour days for them. Trajectory and ballistics experts provide the daily opportunities that would line up with the Dragon as it's coming back to the landing zones. And then we split them into what we call ascending and descending opportunities. Okay, so we still have a few minutes left to go here in this deorbit burn. As I mentioned before, this is the transition of the Dragon spacecraft from Earth orbit to atmospheric reentry. This is lining the spacecraft up for its precise splashdown location there off the coast of San Diego. So in a couple minutes, in fact, we expect this deorbit burn to conclude at 12:04 a.m. Pacific time. So we will stand by and await to hear the call for nominal burn. When we hear that, that will confirm completion of this deorbit burn for Dragon Endeavour. As I mentioned earlier, we will hear primarily the SpaceX core or the crew operations and resource engineer. That is the primary role in mission control that is responsible for communicating with the Crew-11 spacecraft. That individual is seated there on the left-hand side of your screen. That is SpaceX Hawthorne Mission Control. Also seated there, I believe I see my boss, SpaceX Vice President Bill Gerstenmaier, sitting there in the front row. This group of operators are standing by and monitoring Dragon's progress throughout this burn. Now, this particular maneuver that Dragon Endeavour is performing, this deorbit burn, is utilizing the 4 forward Draco thrusters. We say forward because that indicates that it's basically the language indicating that they're located at the top of the Dragon spacecraft. These 4 Draco thrusters, this is the last time that they will be utilized for this mission. Deorbit burn will last for a total of about 13.5 minutes. Okay, we still got about 6 minutes left in this deorbit burn. As we wait for a conclusion of the deorbit burn, let's talk about Dragon Endeavour's journey from the space station so far. Shortly after its separation, Dragon used its Draco thrusters to move away from the station in a series of carefully choreographed maneuvers, or departure burns, and those were done to increase the distance between the spacecraft and the space station. Dragon also executed a phasing burn to lower its orbit and line the spacecraft up with its landing location. Following the phasing burns, Dragon is now completing its deorbit, which will be followed by reentry and splashdown. During the deorbit sequence, several things will happen, including trunk separation, closure of the nose cone, as well as deployment of the drogue and main parachutes, ultimately followed by splashdown.
Again, if you're just joining us, this is the live coverage of NASA's SpaceX Crew-11 mission return to Earth. We are currently in the deorbit burn, which started at 1:51 a.m. Central Time, 2:51 a.m. Eastern Time. It's expected to last approximately 13 minutes, so we still have about 4 more minutes left of this burn. Once it's complete, Dragon will then proceed to jettison the trunk before it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere, exposing the heat shield on the base of the spacecraft and protecting the crew as they make their way toward the splashdown location. And we are anticipating splashdown at 3:41 a.m. Eastern, 2:41 a.m. Central Time off the coast of California.
All right, we have just over a minute remaining in this 13.5-minute burn. This is the deorbit burn. This is the final burn for the forward Draco thrusters. It is placing Dragon on its final trajectory to the splashdown location off the coast of California. We're targeting one of our 3 pre-designated locations. This one will be just off the coast of San Diego. Shortly after the burn concludes, we should hear a call out indicating that the burn was nominal. This would be good news and letting us know that we are continuing with progression of our milestones. After deorbit burn, we will jettison the trunk and have atmospheric reentry. All right, so there's about 10 seconds left in this burn, so we're going to stand by and listen for that call out.
Dragon SpaceX, deorbit burn complete. Performance nominal. Trunk separation initiated.
Dragon copy is nominal deorbit burn. Trunk separation process initiated.
Okay, good words there from SpaceX Core, letting our Crew-11 team know that the deorbit burn was as expected. Now, to prepare for these upcoming events, Dragon is currently doing a couple of things autonomously, such as isolating the thermal control system fluid loops from the radiator. This system is what will help keep the internal temperature of Dragon comfortable during the crew's reentry. Dragon is also initiating separation of the claw mechanism, which will terminate all data, power, and fluid connections between the spacecraft and the trunk, and that is all done in preparation for trunk separation.
Nominal trunk jettison.
Dragon copies.
All right, great news there. We heard the call out for a successful trunk separation. So that means that telemetry is looking good. The nitrox system is primed for cabin and suit cooling, and the heat shield is exposed and ready for atmospheric entry. Now, since we separated the trunk, we are no longer able to generate any new power, but we don't need to since we're coming on home and Dragon has more than enough battery power already stored. So the next milestone that we have coming up is nose cone closure. We expect that at approximately 12:09 a.m., so here in about 3 minutes. The nose cone is at the top of the spacecraft, and it is the structure that protects the docking system as well as the guidance, navigation, and control system. We'll be using 12 hooks to lock and secure the nose cone prior to its atmospheric entry.
That's right. We are standing by for nose cone closure, expected just a few minutes from now. And as you can tell, things are picking up a little bit more quickly as we prepare for splashdown. Again, expecting that to come at 2:41 a.m. Central Time, 3:41 a.m. Eastern. So right now, Dragon is inhibiting those forward bulkhead Draco thrusters. We just used those to complete the deorbit burn, meaning they will not fire again, and ensuring it's safe to latch the nose cone for reentry. The vehicle has, we are also anticipating it to initiate the nitrox suit purge. This helps keep our crew members, Zena Cardman, Mike Fink, Kimya Yui, and Oleg Platonov, cool and comfortable during reentry, which we're expecting in about 20 minutes. At this point, the nose cone, we are standing by for that closure to begin, protecting that forward hatch for reentry. And the crew will be able to use their screens to monitor the locking of the nose cone, which is done by that set of hooks. Underneath the nose cone is also the hatch that the crew members use to ingress and egress, also known as enter and exit the International Space Station while the spacecraft was docked. Now, once they splash down, they'll be using the side hatch to exit the spacecraft and onto the recovery ship. That side hatch is what they used to enter Dragon back in August when they launched to the space station.
For those of you that have just recently joined us for Crew-11 splashdown, we have completed the deorbit burn that set Dragon on its precise trajectory back to our splashdown location off the coast of San Diego, California. We've also jettisoned the trunk, and we've just closed the nose cone. So these are the final physical changes for the Dragon spacecraft prior to its atmospheric entry. And we expect that entry period to begin about 12:30 a.m. Pacific time, so in about 20 minutes or so. We also expect the crew to receive their final entry briefing. This is where the SpaceX core will communicate any changed details, such as timeline shifts to the anticipated loss of signal and acquisition of signal, as well as the entry period. We should also find out what the wave height and wind speed is there at the splashdown location. But when I was coming into work this evening, I did see some stars outside, so hopefully that's a good indication that we've got some smooth seas out there awaiting the crew.
As we are in the process of the hooks and latches driving to secure and close the nose cone, just a recap of what we've seen so far tonight. The spacecraft undocked from the International Space Station earlier today. This Crew-11, spent 165 days aboard the orbiting laboratory, but 167 days in space altogether, if you count the time they have spent getting to and from the space station. At 1:51 a.m. Central Time, 2:51 a.m. Eastern, the spacecraft executed the deorbit burn. That was an approximately 13-minute-long burn, committing the spacecraft to coming home and splashing down off the coast of California. We're anticipating that splashdown in less than 30 minutes from now, 2:41 a.m. Central. After the nose cone closes, we will begin seeing our reentry process, and part of that is a communications blackout. We lose communication with the spacecraft. This is an anticipated and tracked milestone as they go through reentry and plasma builds up around the spacecraft itself. We do regain that communications shortly thereafter, and following that, we anticipate seeing drogue parachutes deployed. There are 2 of those, as well as 4 main parachutes, slowing down the spacecraft to a splashdown time of, again, 2:41 a.m. Central Time. So we're just standing by for confirmation of nose cone closure.
Dragon SpaceX, nose cone secured for entry.
Dragon.
Okay. Okay, we heard good news there. The nose cone is closed and secured, locked in position, ready for atmospheric reentry. Now, as we begin the second half of entry, Dragon has begun to inject cooled nitrox or nitrogen-oxygen mixture into the air, being delivered directly into the suits worn by the crew. Again, this is what will allow our crew members to remain comfortable while external temperatures reach up to 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. Meanwhile, the heat shield is pointing forward, essentially leading Dragon to our landing site just off the coast of San Diego, which is important as it will be doing a lot of the work during this reentry. So let's talk a bit more about the heat shield. Dragon's primary heat shield is comprised of PICA 3.0, which stands for Phenolic Impregnated Carbon Ablator. Now, the first gen PICA was actually initially developed by NASA for studying and sampling comets within our solar system. SpaceX partnered with NASA to develop PICA X, which was the second gen product.
Dragon SpaceX for entry briefing. Report when ready to copy.
Ready to copy.
Okay, starting with timeline. We're completely on time for the previously briefed timeline. Splashdown per your displays at 0841 Zulu. COM blackout start 0828. Blackout end 0835. How copy?
Copy, we are on time for 0841 splashdown per the timeline. COM blackout start 0828, COM blackout end 0835.
That's a good readback. We have a nominal vehicle status. We're tracking an on-target arrival to San Diego with pristine weather conditions for splashdown. Recovery team is on site and ready to support.
Dragon copy is nominal vehicle, excellent weather, and teams are ready to support.
And with that, please report when tablets are secure, restraints are tightened, and visors are down.
SpaceX Dragon, tablets secure, restraints tightened, and visors down.
SpaceX copies all.
All right, so as expected, that was our entry brief to the crew, letting them know that there were actually no updates to the anticipated timeline this morning. So that's great news. Everything is looking well on timed with our anticipated timeline. So as we mentioned before, we expect our anticipated loss of signal to occur around 12:28 a.m. Pacific. So in just about 8 minutes from now, we will have, we anticipate that signal to be regained or anticipate that signal to be acquired again at 12:35 a.m. Pacific time. Now, sometimes we are able to hail the crew a little bit earlier than that. Sometimes we get those communications back. And then once again, splashdown at 12:41 a.m. Pacific. So again, if you're in Southern California, head outside and look up. Now, let's get back to talking a little bit about the heat shield. As you know, we're talking about this signal loss, and that's due to part of what's going on with that heat shield. So SpaceX partnered with NASA to develop the second generation heat shield product, and that was actually used on all of the Dragon 1 CRS missions that resupplied the space station on 20 missions. Then fast forwarding to PICA 3.0, that was developed specifically for use on Dragon 2 crew and cargo with enhanced structural and thermal properties that optimized the heat shield and drove down cost and mass. So the remainder of Dragon is composed primarily of a SpaceX proprietary ablative material. That's another class of thermal protection, which is lighter weight versus PICA and protects the underlying composite structure during the reentry phase, and that's to ensure the structural capabilities of the spacecraft are maintained. Now, while Dragon will experience temperatures over 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit peak, during those off-peak reentry conditions, the characteristics of the thermal protection systems, or TPS as you hear it called, coupled with the environmental control and life support, or ECLIS, that system pressurized will be pressurizing the interior, and all those combined will ensure that the crew will stay cool and comfortable during all phases of reentry through splashdown.
SpaceX Dragon,
Okay, so
opening seat 3 visor just to adjust glasses.
Dragon, SpaceX, can you repeat?
Temporarily opening seat 3 visor to adjust glasses.
Copy, adjusting glasses. Your go for that.
Okay, so that was important to note there because our commander, Zena Cardman, had already reported back that all visors were down and in the locked position ready for atmospheric reentry, but one of our crew members had to adjust their glasses. So she did a good job there in reporting back to SpaceX crew to let them know that one of the crew members had to reopen momentarily.
Visors are down.
We copy. Visors are down. 5 minutes until predicted calm blackout. See you on the other side at 0835.
Copy 0835. Talk to you soon.
Okay, so as we have been saying, everything that Dragon and the crew on board does is carefully choreographed, not just the maneuvers that the spacecraft is executing, but the communications between our crew here on the ground and our crew in space. So, Leah, we can see all of that being perfectly demonstrated with what's going on now.
Absolutely, and we are standing by for the reentry portion when we expect to lose communications with the spacecraft, but we will regain that communication after they have begun re-entering the atmosphere. So once Dragon has re-entered the Earth's atmosphere, a series of parachutes will deploy to slow the crew's descent. First will be the 2 drogue chutes, followed by the 4 main chutes to guide Dragon to its first contact with Earth since launching in August. Dragon will automatically deploy these parachutes when different pressure and positioning sensors on the spacecraft detect that they are at the right speed and altitude. The spacecraft velocity at drogue deploy is approximately 350 miles per hour, and they deploy at about 18,000 feet. You're getting a live look inside the cabin right now. That's Crew-11 preparing for their re-entry period. Again, having spent 165 days aboard the space station, and when they splash down, capping a 167-day mission. Before they can splash down, though, a little bit more about those parachutes. The next that we will see deploy will be the main parachutes. There are 4 of those. They deploy at approximately 119 miles per hour, or I should say when the spacecraft is traveling about 119 miles per hour, and they deploy at about 65,000 feet. And at splashdown, Dragon is traveling approximately 16 miles per hour, which is a pretty good deceleration from the about 17,500 miles per hour that they were traveling while in Earth orbit with the International Space Station. Now, the highest G load the crew will experience during re-entry is approximately 3 to 5 Gs, so about 3 to 5 times what we are experiencing right now standing on Earth. This view is over the shoulder of Commander Zena Cardman and pilot Mike Fink of the Crew-11 spacecraft. In this view, you can see their crew displays. They're able to monitor everything happening with the spacecraft. However, all the next milestones should be completely autonomous and hands-off for the crew.
We can preview the fact.
And we just heard that the crew is in entry attitude, and we are anticipating losing this view and losing our audio communications with the crew in just a minute or so as they enter this entry interface. They'll be traveling and experiencing heat outside the capsule at approximately 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. And as they are traveling and re-entering Earth's atmosphere, a plasma builds up around the capsule that prevents us from communicating back and forth with the crew. We expect to regain communications with them about 7 minutes later, but we're still getting great views right now.
I love this view over their shoulders because you can see what our pilot and commander can see. They're continuing to follow along with Dragon's progress. As Leah mentioned, we have designed the spacecraft to be completely autonomous. Dragon is flying itself, so they are able to monitor along with everything that's going on. I also want to momentarily point out on the bottom of your screen there, you have some graphical interfaces there that represent the speed and the altitude, and it looks like we've lost our views there as that, we are now entering the period of anticipated loss of signal. This is where, as Leah mentioned, the plasma is beginning to build up on the exterior of the capsule as we expect. This happens with every spacecraft reentry for Dragon, and so this lasts just a few minutes. But I want to momentarily note that there on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, you can actually see something pretty cool where when one of the Draco thrusters ignite to fire and help steer the spacecraft, you will actually see that they're represented on the interface there. Now, the four in the middle, those are representing the four forward Draco thrusters. We won't see those ignite at all because those were last utilized in the 13-minute deorbit burn that we completed earlier. Those are located under the nose cone, which has been closed, locked, and secured. So everything that you'll be seeing are the thrusters that are located on the side of our spacecraft, and that is enabling Dragon to fly itself home to its predetermined splashdown site off the coast of San Diego, California. For about a minute and a half until we have that atmospheric reentry. Once again, if you're in Southern California, head on outside and look up. There's a good chance that you might be able to actually see Dragon streak across the sky, look toward about the north and the west. As we mentioned before, we have entered a communications blackout period, which lasts about 7 minutes due to the plasma formation on the exterior of the capsule. We've got about 5 minutes remaining until we believe we can acquire that signal again. Now, during this time, no vehicle telemetry is received by Mission Control or the recovery team, and no external commanding of the vehicle or voice communication is possible. But like I was saying, Dragon is designed to fly itself. During this reentry, the vehicle will be slowing down from its orbital velocity of about 17,500 miles per hour, and it's slowing down. The atmosphere is really doing a lot of the work in conjunction with that heat shield to dispel that velocity. That results in heat, and that is why we have this plasma building up on the exterior of the spacecraft. It'll slow down to about 350 miles per hour, thanks to the heat shield and the atmosphere. And so at that point, we'll deploy the drogue parachutes. But during reentry, the top temperature that Dragon experiences will be about 3,500 degrees Fahrenheit. So pretty warm on the outside, but there is cool nitrox air being flowed through the suits that each crew member is wearing. So we ensure that they remain comfortable during this brief journey through the atmosphere.
Now, while we await AOS, or acquisition of signal, let's go through a brief recap of today's events. Hatch closure took place at 2:29 p.m. Central Time after all 4 crew members floated into Dragon for their ride home. They took time to configure the spacecraft cabin, put on their suits, and get seated ahead of undocking, which occurred at 4:20 p.m. Central. Dragon's departure burns helped move it out of the keep-out sphere and approach ellipsoid, which are both invisible boundaries we monitor around the space station. Since then, we completed the deorbit burn at 1:51. Oh, and you're getting your first views of re-entry. This is live, and if you're in California, you can go see this with your own eyes. This is Crew-11 re-entering after 167 days in space. Again, we are in a loss of signal period. This is a tracked period as the spacecraft re-enters Earth's atmosphere. We anticipate regaining signal with Crew-11 momentarily, and when the spacecraft reaches an altitude of 18,000 feet above Earth, 2 drogue chutes will deploy to slow it down ahead of the 4 main parachutes deploying at 6,000 feet in altitude. Now, splashdown will be the milestone we will see after that, which is expected for 2:41 a.m. Central Time. So again, we're standing by for acquisition of signal and continued communication with Crew-11, expecting that just a few minutes from now.
Dragon SpaceX, comm check.
SpaceX Dragon, loud and clear.
We have you the same, loud and clear. Expect automated chute deployment.
Copy, automated chute deploy expected.
All right, so there we heard that we had confirmation of that acquisition of signal, or AOS. It actually came in a minute early, so that's good news there. We heard the core inform the crew to expect drogue parachute deployment that happens when Dragon senses the right speed and altitude. So that's roughly about 350 miles per hour and around 18,000 feet in altitude. There we have a view from...
GPS converged. Expect nominal altitude for drogue chute deploy.
Dragon copies, expecting nominal altitude.
So we'll have that drogue deploy in about a minute from now, but we have our first views from the WB-57. This is a high-altitude tracking plane that is providing these thermal signatures via infrared. This is really cool to see here as we continue to track Dragon on its way back to planet Earth. So momentarily, we expect for visual and...
Brace for drogue window.
Crew brace.
Dragon has safed the propulsion system as we anticipate drogue deployment any moment now. Drogue parachutes are utilized to stabilize and decelerate the vehicle further prior to deployment of the main parachutes. Drogue should be deploying here in a couple seconds, and mains will follow in about 1 minute. There we have visual confirmation of drogue deploy.
Visual, 2 healthy drogues.
Kind of a cool shot.
Copies.
I think we had the recovery vessel in the background there just momentarily. Main parachutes deploying in about 20 seconds. The main parachutes deploy when the vehicle's about 119 miles per hour and around 6,000 feet. There we can see visual confirmation of deployment of the 4 mains.
Visual, 4 healthy mains.
These main parachutes help decelerate the spacecraft even further. So they deploy around 119 miles per hour, and they'll decelerate it down to about 15, 16 miles per hour, and that will be the speed in which the spacecraft is traveling upon splashdown. Once again, we're anticipating splashdown at 12:41 a.m.
Meters.
Copy, 1,000.
We'll now begin to hear Crew-11 Commander Zena Cardman call out the altitude from her seat there in Dragon Endeavour. SpaceX's mission control team in Hawthorne continues to report the precise landing coordinates to the recovery team.
800.
Copy, 800.
Those main parachutes now fully reefed or inflated. We ensure that the parachutes inflate over a few seconds to help reduce the shock to the system.
600 meters.
Copy, 600.
All around great views of Dragon Endeavour as it continues its way back to Earth.
Meters.
Copy, 400. Crew are braced.
Standing by for splashdown. "67 days in space, Dragon and NASA astronauts Zena Cardman and Mike Fink, Kimya Yui of JAXA, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov are back on Earth.
Dragon, SpaceX, we see splashdown.
SpaceX Dragon, copy, concur. Splashdown and mains are cut. We are in 4.800.
SpaceX copies, and we see the same. Mains cut. On behalf of SpaceX and NASA, welcome home, Crew-11.
SpaceX Dragon, it's so good to be home. With deep gratitude to the teams who got us there and back.
Again, a return by the books for Crew-11, having splashed down at 2:41 a.m. Central Time off the coast of California. We will now begin moving into the recovery process. We'll see the boats begin to approach and inspect the spacecraft by checking for hypergol and other ordnance checks. They will begin to rig the spacecraft and prepare it to be lifted on that recovery ship. And this is a great view of some of those boats that go out and check the spacecraft. They are going to be sniffing it, essentially, for these hazardous fuels that can linger once the spacecraft has re-entered Earth's atmosphere.
SpaceX Dragon 4.800, Section 3. We are in Stable 1.
SpaceX copies. Stable 1.
That's the voice of NASA astronaut and commander of Crew-11, Zena Cardman, reporting back that they are working through their procedures and that the capsule is in Stable 1, which is the position that you see on your screen here, where it is upright in the water. This is just what we were hoping for, and again, it's been a completely nominal and by-the-books return for the crew today. This is a live view of Crew-11 aboard Dragon from the SpaceX recovery vehicle, or from their SpaceX recovery ship. And this day for the crew started about 10.5 hours ago when they undocked from the International Space Station. SpaceX
Dragon
recovery
SpaceX.
teams have been given the go to approach.
SpaceX is go for recovery personnel to approach. Expect personnel alongside in 1 minute.
Copy, 1 minute. Thank you.
And you just heard that call out from the Corps in Hawthorne, California, to the crew aboard Dragon, that the SpaceX personnel who have been in the general vicinity of Dragon's anticipated splashdown location now have the go to approach the spacecraft and begin that recovery process.
All right, so as we heard, we are now standing by for recovery of the Dragon Endeavour spacecraft with NASA astronaut Zena Cardman and Mike Fink, Kimia Yui of JAXA, and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov, who are inside that spacecraft that you see there. Now, Dragon has already, I would also like to point out, we've got some folks here approaching the spacecraft now that they have gotten the okay for the approach. They're on some fast boats there. This is the SpaceX recovery team. Personally, one of my favorite teams to work with here at SpaceX. They're a really scrappy crew, and they're going to work really quickly here to get the Crew-11 team out of the water. And it's always a lot of fun to watch these operations proceed. Now, Dragon has already autonomously completed several steps to safe itself following splashdown. For those of you that perhaps completion of the safety sweeps, that was just indicating that the recovery team performed the required checks to ensure that there weren't any unfired pyros, which are used to...
Dragon, be advised, transitioning forward link. Comm will be unavailable for approximately 5 minutes.
Earlier, prior to atmospheric reentry, we heard SpaceX core report to the crew during the, during the entry brief that recovery conditions were almost pristine, and he was not joking. It seems that the weather, the waves are pretty smooth out there. And Leah mentioned earlier that there are some dolphins out to play as well. Perhaps we might be able to get to see those as the recovery vessel gets a little closer to the spacecraft. On your screen now are our operators at SpaceX Mission Control. They continue to monitor Dragon Endeavour during these recovery operations, as well as communicate directly to the recovery team. Everything is carefully coordinated within our procedures, and here you see folks that are responsible for individual portions to ensure that everything is executed as planned. If you've just recently joined us, we had a perfectly nominal re-entry of Dragon Endeavour. The crew splashed down exactly on time at 12:41 a.m. Pacific time off the coast of San Diego. The recovery team has arrived at the splashdown location and are placing the required straps onto the Dragon spacecraft. The crew are safely inside. Nobody is allowed to pass go just yet. We still have to lift the spacecraft out of the water and onto our recovery vessel.
Dragon SpaceX, forward link transition complete. Comm check.
We've got you loud and clear.
We have you the same.
Hopefully we'll be able to bring those views of the recovery team back. But at this point, I can share that one member of the recovery team is still, oh, there we can see our recovery vessel continuing to approach Dragon Endeavour there in its splashdown location. We still have one recovery team member working to apply the rigging to the capsule. You can see that work ongoing there. As we've seen, this involves climbing on top of the spacecraft itself to attach these hoist rings and connect the lifting lines. Overall, the progress tonight has been very smooth and very rapid. Depending on the sea state, it can take us a little bit longer, but things are really smooth this evening, and the recovery team is very efficient. It takes us less than an hour to raise Dragon onto the recovery vessel and remove the crew from the spacecraft. After initial medical checkouts, the crew will return to land within 4 hours by helicopter. So everything continuing to proceed as scheduled and as anticipated. The ring that you see there on the deck of the, of the recovery vessel, that is what we refer to as the nest. That is where the Dragon, once lifted out of the water using the hydraulic lift there at the aft end of the recovery vessel, the Dragon spacecraft will be lifted and placed into that nest, and that nest will then be translated forward on the recovery vessel up to where the egress the egress bay is located. Yeah, so this is a great view there of the recovery team member that is responsible for placing the hoist straps and the rigging required to lift the the Dragon spacecraft out of the water, along with the recovery team members located in the fast boat, helping to provide the necessary light, as this is obviously a nighttime splashdown operation. We've done several of these before, and as you can see there, the sea state is super calm, and I'm assuming really nice conditions to be working in right now. Over time, we can see the primary recovery vessel. This is our recovery vessel Shannon, named after, of course, Shannon Walker, who flew on Crew-11. She is the first female astronaut to fly in our Dragon spacecraft. So we have this vessel named after her. And we can see Shannon slowly but surely getting closer and closer to Dragon Endeavour as it patiently waits there in the glass-like water. Once all the required straps and rings are in place and the recovery vessel is in its location and everything is attached, we'll actually see that recovery team member jump off from the capsule and into the water. It's one of my favorite moments of the recovery process. I think we might, yep, there they are. The dolphins are back to play. We now have a better view of them. I'm sure they're very intrigued by all the lights that are in the area here in the middle of the night in Southern California.